I think we're ready to begin. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tom Fitton. I'm president of Judicial Watch, and welcome to our discussion on the Fairness Doctrine. Judicial Watch is a conservative, nonpartisan educational foundation dedicated to promoting transparency, accountability, and integrity in government, politics, and the law. Through its educational endeavors, Judicial Watch advocates high standards of ethics and morality in our nation's public life and seeks to ensure that political and judicial officials obey the law and do not abuse the powers entrusted to them by the American people. Our topic this afternoon, of course, is the Fairness Doctrine. We're blessed to be joined by probably three of the most knowledgeable individuals in Washington on the topic, or at least two of them are here. We're expecting the third shortly. In brief, the Fairness Doctrine is a policy which would require broadcasters to air both sides of controversial issues and to do so in a manner that was, in the FCC's view, the Federal Communications Commission, honest, equitable, and balanced. Currently, a stealth version of the doctrine may be teed up at the FCC in the form of community advisory boards to help determine local programming. Efforts to reimpose the Fairness Doctrine also could stretch to cable, satellite, and even the internet, or so that's the concern. But if the Fairness Doctrine is dead, as President Obama would have you believe given his stated and recent opposition to it, you wouldn't know it from the batch of documents Judicial Watch obtained from the FCC recently. We filed a Freedom of Information Act request back in December of 2008 to find out what internal government discussions have taken place surrounding the reimplementation of the Fairness Doctrine, which had been abolished in 1987. And there was much discussion for sure. Not only do the documents show that controversy continues concerning the Fairness Doctrine, but the FCC is considering alternative proposals that may similarly regulate free speech in the media. Here's one example. In December 2007, the FCC proposed new localism measures to force broadcast stations to offer programming more responsive to the needs and interests of the communities that they are licensed to serve. These proposed measures are highlighted in a document. Of course, all these documents are available on our internet site at judicialwatch.org, but the document is entitled The Report on Broadcast Localism and the Notice of Approved Rulemaking. And it included a requirement that broadcasters provide 3 hours per week of locally produced program, and that licensees establish permanent advisory boards, including representatives of underserved community segments. The FCC noted that these measures would become part of the application renewal process to make sure broadcasters, quote, meet their responsibilities, unquote. In my view, it's a nice way of the government to say, do it or else. Problems with this localism proposal are highlighted in a legal memo written by Kathleen Kirby, who may be well known by one of our panelists, of the law firm Wiley and submitted to Rosemary Harold, serving as legal counsel to FCC Commissioner Robert McDowell. And this was a document that Ms. Kirby presented, basically detailing her thoughts on the Fairness Doctrine and its cousins, in my view. In the document, which was distributed internally at the FCC, Ms. Kirby advises that the Fairness Doctrine would do well to stay dead. But Ms. Kirby then turns her attention to localism, advising that such a policy could represent a stealth enactment of the Fairness Doctrine. Ms. Kirby states, she asks, convene advisory boards, give aggrieved listeners more straightforward guidance on how individuals can directly participate in the license renewal process. That sounds mild, but then again, so did the Fairness Doctrine. One thing is for certain, though, these documents show that we're going to have to keep an eye on the FCC. In my view, the last thing this country needs is bureaucrats in the Obama administration stomping on the First Amendment rights of conservatives, or frankly anyone else who doesn't buy into the government's view of the way the world ought to work. As I said, one would be hard-pressed to have better experts on the controversies surrounding the Fairness Doctrine and other FCC regulatory threats to our freedom. And joining me on my immediate left is Richard Wiley, who's a partner of Wiley Ryan, who presumably employs Ms. Kirby, or still does. Mr. Wiley is a real great expert to have. He heads the firm's 80-attorney communications practice, which is the largest in the nation. As chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, he had advocated increased competition and lessened regulation in the communications field. Mr. Wiley played a pivotal role in the development of HD TV in this country. All of us sports fans can thank him for that. serving 9 years as chairman of the FCC's Advisory Committee on Advanced Television Service. He represents a number of major communications-oriented organizations, including Verizon, AT&T, the Newspaper Association of America, Viacom CBS, and Sirius Satellite Radio. And he's obviously also a recent frequent author and lecturer on telecommunications and information law. And to my far left, but not to my far right, is Jerry Fritz. For the past 22 years, Jerry Fritz has been the Senior Vice President for Legal and Strategic Affairs for Arlington, Virginia-based Albritton Communication Company, where he serves as General Counsel, Director of Strategic Planning, and Head of Government Relations for a media group with 8 ABC affiliates, a cable news channel, several newspapers, and various other media interests, including web hosting and the newly created web print combo publication, Politico.com, which is congratulations on the success of that new news organization. Jerry joined Albritton in 1987 after serving as Chief of Staff to FCC Chairman Mark Fowler at the time. And at the FCC, he had helped kill the Fairness Doctrine. And prior to joining the chairman's staff, he had practiced communications law and taught at George Mason University Law School, and he's been intimately involved in establishing new platforms for broadcast programming, including the first independent local cable news channel, internet news services, and platform-agnostic content distribution, which I think will be interesting to discuss in terms of the debate over internet neutrality. And he's a former director of the National Association of Broadcasters and testified many times for Congress on their behalf. And he also worked with the ABAs and chaired their Communications Law Forum, which is obviously, you can see why the expertise that of our guests is so valuable to have for us. Joining us later, he's been delayed by votes, is Congressman Mike Pence, and maybe I'll just introduce Congressman Pence when he comes along, but he's been a leader in Congress in trying to make sure that the Fairness Doctrine stays dead and buried, and he's been a leader generally on press freedom and First Amendment freedom in terms of protecting it from government overreaching. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Wiley.
Tom, thank you very much, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to participate in this panel today, but since it's been about 30 years since I served as chairman of the FCC, it's really a pleasure to be anywhere today. But beyond that, it's going to be good to be with Mike Pence, an outstanding congressman, and also, of course, with my old FCC colleague and a very experienced broadcast attorney, Jerry Fritz. We're all here, of course, to discuss the Fairness Doctrine, as Tom suggested, and the policy and constitutional implications that might be involved in its potential reinstitution. I thought it might be useful to begin with a little brief description of our subject. And Tom has given us some, but I want to expand on it a little bit. What in the world is, or should I say was, the Fairness Doctrine? And how could it be that 22 years after its abolition, we are all gathering this afternoon to discuss it? Well, if you're a little hazy about the answers to that, you should be forgiven, because even members of the broadcast industry and their attorneys have not thought seriously about this issue for over 2 decades. And they haven't thought and haven't had to think about the practical and legal implications of perhaps restoring that doctrine.